Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The U of L and Lethbridge College celebrated National Indigenous Peoples Day with a wide range of special events. BCN's Micah Quinn has the details. Some controversy has arisen in Winnipeg as an annual Canada Day event at the Forks is being renamed. And Toronto Sun columnist and one of our regular contributors, Brian Lilly, is calling on the Trudeau Liberals to fire 5 ministers. He will explain why.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Some controversy has arisen at a popular tourist attraction in Winnipeg. The Forks has been known as a meeting place for many locals, with thousands coming out each and every year to celebrate at the site on Canada Day. Now, some Winnipeggers are upset after hearing that the corporation that manages the site has decided to do away with the traditional Canada Day celebration and fireworks. Instead, they're rebranding the day focused more on Indigenous and multicultural themed experiences. Winnipegger Chuck Beers says he's upset over the decision to leave the word Canada out of the event, which has now been renamed A New Day. Following posts on social media calling to boycott the Forks over this action, Beer took it upon himself to ensure Canada Day is still celebrated at this historic site.
We're going to be at the Forks, and we have volunteers wearing Canada t-shirts, and we got about 10 volunteers right now. I don't know if we'll all be needed or not, but anyway, we're going to walk around and ask people if they want a Canadian flag. We're going to give them a Canadian flag. And like I said, I want people just to come down to the Forks with their family and celebrate Canada Day. No protesting, no signs, no parade, no nothing like that. No getting mad and saying, screw the Forks or anything. Just come down, celebrate Canada Day the way you normally would with your family, and wave a flag and sing "O Canada" with us.
Now, in a media release, the Forks says the rebranding was based on consultations with Indigenous peoples, newcomers, and youth regarding what Canada Day could look like at the Forks. The federal court has certified a class action lawsuit against Ottawa on behalf of Indigenous children who were placed into care from 1992 to 2019. Representative plaintiff Cheyenne Stonechild says she hopes Canada will compensate thousands of off-reserve youth who are no less Indigenous than those who were taken from their homes on the reserves.
I'm a young Cree woman and a survivor of what has been called the millennial scoop. Authorities removed me from my mother when I was 8 years old, and I spent the rest of my childhood tossed between at least 15 different foster homes and group homes. I spent precisely 1 day with someone from my family group. I was one of the many thousands of Indigenous children who represent only about 5% of Canada's population, yet represent more than 50% of children in foster care. My mother was a survivor of the 60s scoop, one of the 2,000 or so Indigenous children scooped from their families and communities and adopted out to primarily white families. And her mother, my kukum, my grandma, was a survivor of the residential school system. My story is tragically common. The cycle of assimilation that began with residential schools did not end.
Tuesday marked National Indigenous Peoples Day. Now, here in Lethbridge, there were multiple events taking place at the University of Lethbridge and Lethbridge College to honor our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. As BCN's Micah Quinn explains now, the day kicked off with a round dance full of soaring melodies and beating drums.
Students and staff from the University of Lethbridge gathered together to participate in a traditional round dance as Indigenous drummers and singers played them on through the power of music. Round dances are traditional Indigenous music pieces that encouraged participants to step to the beat of the drums in a circle while holding hands.
It's for everybody. It's for everyone on campus to come together and to celebrate with us and to celebrate with us around National Indigenous Peoples Day.
Meanwhile, at Lethbridge College, the post-secondary institution announced a new Blackfoot Speaking Award. Each year, $1,000 will be given to 5 Blackfoot students at the college who are working to preserve the culture and language of their people.
This is about the heart of a scholarship and what the intention behind the scholarship really means. And for our students to recognize 5 students and to have grandparents look at our students and the money come from Lethbridge College, it really is that way of saying truth and reconciliation isn't a day, it's a commitment.
The award comes after the college took part in the McConnell Foundation's Social Innovation Lab on reconciliation in the post-secondary sector. The Lethbridge team worked to incorporate Indigenous ways into the curriculum, and preserving the Blackfoot language came out as a main topic of focus.
The struggles with the Blackfoot culture is the loss of the Blackfoot language, and so we're giving our students that opportunity to preserve the Blackfoot language and culture.
Recipients for the award will be chosen based on video submissions, which will showcase the students' Blackfoot speaking abilities. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
That's great to see for the University of Lethbridge and Lethbridge College. Researchers at the University of Calgary, meanwhile, have spent the past 7 years working on robots that can be deployed to help out during disasters. Officials say the biggest obstacle is developing artificial intelligence and the public being willing to accept the mechanical helpers.
We started this project about 7 years ago, and we have been working with this step by step, from creating legs, torsos, control system, navigation systems, also and many other things to be building this little by little. This can change locomotion style and go from walking to crawling to climbing based on the environment that they see. So right now it has sensors that uses to perceive the environment, create a 3D map of the space. And this robot computes how stable it is, what the geometrical architecture of the systems is, or the environment is, to decide what locomotion style to use.
What if that robot can also do dishes? That'd be kind of cool. You know, a lot of the heavy rain we experienced here in southwestern Alberta has disappeared. We enjoyed sunshine mixed with clouds today, and it was fairly warm. Jeanette Rocher is in now with an early peek of the forecast. Jeanette, not bad for the first official day of summer.
Yeah, not bad at all, Hal. I got out there for a little while and enjoyed the sunshine. We reached a high of 22 degrees today. Now, into this evening, we're looking at another 30% chance of showers with a risk of thunderstorms. But into tomorrow, even warmer conditions, high of 25. We're going to see a humidex of 27. So all that moisture building up into some humidity for us. As for the rest of the week, I will get into those details coming up later on in the newscast.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. The leader of Alberta's official opposition has apologized for her party's mistreatment of party volunteers. NDP leader Rachel Notley says she takes full responsibility and approved measures to address workplace concerns, including engaging a third party to investigate and resolve workplace respect and harassment complaints. Notley says she and all of the executive staff will take additional respectful workplace training. The change comes 2 weeks after a letter written to Notley in early March by 15 NDP constituency presidents outlined the mistreatment and bullying of party volunteers. More and more Albertans are feeling the pinch in their wallets due to inflation. Now, those living on a fixed income may be feeling it even more since the province stopped adjusting compensation according to the cost of living. NDP finance critic Shannon Phillips and Marie Renaud, MLA for St. Albert, were in Lethbridge, calling on Travis Taves and other UCP leadership candidates to immediately return to the legislature and reverse their cuts to AISH, the Assured Income for the Severely Handicapped.
Leadership candidate Travis Taves literally picked the pockets of Albertans who have the least in our society and gave billions in giveaways to already profitable corporations. And at the same time, he froze benefits for people with disabilities, meaning their benefits don't keep pace with inflation.
So this ranges from people perhaps that Down syndrome, spinal cord injury, brain injury, stage 4 cancers, all kinds of disabilities. And let's be, people with disabilities and medical conditions have additional expenses that most of us do not.
There are currently around 70,000 Albertans who receive the Assured Income for the Severely Handicapped benefit. Pride Week in Lethbridge kicked off with a flag raising taking place Monday evening at City Hall. The president of Lethbridge Pride Society says the event was special as it was the first in-person event back following 2 years of COVID-19 lockdowns.
We are a community that really relies on each other. We're a community that needs to needs to be able to connect. And as good and as privileged as we are to have the internet, there's no replacing face-to-face, in-person celebration and community.
Some dignitaries took part in the flag raising, including Edmonton MLA Janice Irwin and Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips. Phillips says Pride is an important time for people to come together and celebrate.
I think Pride is really important to folks. Every year I run into young people in the park who come in from rural communities where they can't necessarily be themselves, or they're just starting to start that journey. Pride's really important for that. It's important to have these family events and places where people can celebrate. Pride's also about who's not there. And every year we need to remember that there are folks that are too afraid, and that folks who still are not able to come out for whatever reason.
This Saturday at 11 a.m., the annual Pride Parade will take place, beginning at Civic Centre Field before making its way to Galt Gardens. You know, even though it's officially summer, Lethbridge City Council voted unanimously to make some changes when it comes to snow removal here in our city. Beginning next winter, more snow routes will be declared across Lethbridge, with around 28 kilometers of existing routes being piloted with plowing to the right. Council also agreed to implement more residential plowing and less snow removal. Snow removal will continue, however, in the hospital area, along with the downtown core and around school zones. Officials will also declare snow routes more frequently and provide enforcement during snow events. Officials at Lethbridge County passed a new bylaw in which it will be combining all of the county's previous fire-related bylaws into one comprehensive piece of legislation for clarity and ease of use. They include the bylaws pertaining to stubble burning, fire bans, fire permits, and Lethbridge County fire stations. There are some changes of the content of the bylaw, which includes minimum fines for violations increasing from $100 to $250 and authorizing county administration to impose fire bans and restrictions. More information on the changes can be found on the Lethbridge County website. If you've ever visited the town of Vulcan, Alberta, you'll probably notice a particular theme that runs throughout the town. BCN's Angela Stewart went on a tour with the town's mayor and discussed how they adopted everything from Star Trek.
We're, kind of internationally recognized.
Almost 2,000 people populate this small southern Alberta town. Known for its oil and gas and farming community originally, Vulcan has become a worldwide tourist attraction as the town chronicles the series of Star Trek.
Leonard Nimoy was from the planet Vulcan, so why not capitalize on that?
And that's exactly what happened. The first piece constructed was the town's replica of Star Trek Enterprise.
It was built in 1985. The FX6 is our airport signia, that's our call letters. This would be one of their ships, theoretically one of their ships in the movie Star Trek.
When you make your way around the starship, you'll see the saying "Live long and prosper," written in Klingon.
And our street out front is called Klingon Way. We renamed the street itself to represent the Klingons. Originally, it was supposed to be a space station.
Although does not represent a specific space station from the series, the Vulcan Tourism and Trek station, built in the late 1980s, features a variety of things inside for tourists.
We did have a meteor land not too far from here, so there's a chunk of this meteor in the facility. It's got a green screen, so you can get your picture taken. There's memorabilia for Star Trek.
Over the years, the town has developed pieces that are based off the series, including the streetlights and the crosswalks. Well, besides the tourism center and the spaceship, probably one of the coolest things you'll see if you visit the town of Vulcan is this bronze statue of actor Leonard Nimoy, which also includes his handprint.
He came to our community in 2010, and so at that time there we had him allow us to have his imprint, or his hand imprint. When he came here, he said that he finally came back home, and it was one of the latter functions that he participated when he was still feeling healthy and well.
The town does continue to build off the current theme with the hopes of adding more stuff in the future. And in the famous last words of our good buddy Spock here, live long and prosper. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Well done, Angela. Well done. Toronto Sun columnist and one of our regular contributors, Brian Lilly, is calling for five different Trudeau ministers to either be fired or shuffled to other portfolios. He says a number of ministers have failed Canadians miserably, and Ottawa is just adrift right now. Brian gave us some examples of why he feels that way.
We've got a situation where the foreign affairs minister has diplomats going off to party it up with Russian embassy staff to celebrate Russia Day while we're ostensibly at war with them. We've got an immigration system where to bring in a skilled tradesperson, 43-month delay. There are all kinds of problems surrounding this, Hal, and these are not issues that the government can blame on anybody else, and yet they are.
Brian will also give his thoughts on if Bill C-11, the controversial Internet regulatory bill, will pass in the Senate. He'll have details coming up after business news. Former leader of the Parti Québécois, André Boisclair, pleaded guilty to 2 counts of sexual assault. This stems from 2 separate incidents involving men in their early 20s. The defense and Crown are asking for a jail sentence of 2 years less a day.
What I can tell you is it's always a good thing when a guilty plea is entered in such a case. Victims don't have to testify, and they receive some sort of validation from what they experience, which is a good thing. Sexual assault cases are always difficult, but it's my job. And I would have to say that actually the plaintiffs in this file have made my job easy for being always present and collaborative.
And I understand that they were also extremely credible, their testimony.
Of course, extremely credible, and the prosecution would have been ready to go forward with a trial if not guilty plea would have been entered.
Saskatchewan is organizing a charter flight to bring Ukrainian refugees to the province. The government says the flight is expected to bring around 230 people and is scheduled to arrive in Regina the week of July 4th. Officials say the flight itself is being donated by an aviation company in Switzerland, while other costs associated with the flight are still being finalized. Hundreds of people continue to flee intense fighting in eastern Ukraine as Russian and Ukrainian forces battle for control of several key cities and villages.
У нас тоже уже очень страшно. Муж там остался, муж вообще лежачий. Я посмотрю, как будет обстановка, может, я вернусь. Ой, а как его оставить? Он себе ни обед не согреть, ни газа, ни света, ни воды, ни хлеба, ничего нет. Это уже сколько времени? И сколько времени длится?
Federal officials in the United States say most of Yellowstone National Park should reopen within the next couple of weeks. Record floods hit the region hard last week while knocking out major roads and forcing thousands of people to evacuate. Entrances to the south loop of the park will reopen to a limited number of visitors on June the 22nd. The south loop includes the Old Faithful Geyser and Yellowstone Lake. Some campgrounds around the south loop, however, in Wyoming will remain closed. Local residents and business owners are likely relieved that parts of the park will reopen. Yellowstone receives most of its visitors between June and September. Well, we too had some rain here in southwestern Alberta, but fortunately not a lot of flooding. There's also a chance of more shower activity developing tonight. Full weather details are coming up shortly. We enjoyed a nice day for the first official day of summer, and a lot of the rain we've been experiencing lately has been making the coulees look nice and green here in Lethbridge. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, we may even see more showers developing tonight?
Yeah, that's right, Hal. Into this evening, we are looking at a 30% chance of showers and the possibility of a thunderstorm as well. Overnight low 11 degrees. Now, as we look into Wednesday, lovely day, high of 25. Going to see a humidex of 27. Winds from the west at 30 kilometers per hour, gusting to 50. That's happening tonight into tomorrow as well. Those winds from the southwest, though. Into Thursday, we're looking at a high of 20 degrees. Lots of sunshine there. Mainly cloudy skies on Friday. 17 the high. 19 on Saturday. But look at Sunday and Monday, jumping all the way up to 26 degrees with lots of sunshine. That should actually be pushing us over the average high for this time of year. Now, according to the almanac, the average high is 23 degrees, so we'll definitely be above that later on this week. At 9 degrees, the average low. 33 was our high temperature on this day back in 1970. And in 1996, we were sitting at only 3 degrees, so that's very chilly for this time of year. 5:24 is when the sun rose this morning, and our sunset this evening at 9:43 p.m. So that's giving us 16 hours and 21 minutes of daylight. Summer solstice, by the way, today, longest day of the year. So there you go, 16 hours and 21 minutes. 18 degrees on the coast tomorrow, Victoria, with partly cloudy skies, a bit windy in the Juan de Fuca Strait. 18 in Vancouver, as well as 60% chance of showers. 18 in Edmonton tomorrow, 24 a high for Calgary. Both of those cities looking at 30% chance of showers and a risk of a thunderstorm as well. As we look to the rest of the prairies, 26 the high in Saskatoon, 28 in Regina, 25 Winnipeg. Now, Winnipeg, high humidity, looking at a humidex of 30 tomorrow for Winnipeg. So going to be quite a warm one there. As we look to the central part of the country, 31 degrees in Toronto, humidex of 39, very warm there, 40% chance of showers, risk of a thunderstorm, 25 in Ottawa, 26 in Montreal, and looking at showers for both of those cities. Ottawa also expecting the possibility of a thunderstorm tomorrow. Into Fredericton, we're looking at beautiful sunny skies, 21 the high, 17 the high in Halifax. Lovely 21-degree day in Charlottetown. Could feel a little cooler along the coast, though. Same thing for St. John's, 19 in St. John's, but cooler along the coast with partly cloudy skies. So there you go. That is your forecast.
Stats Canada reports job vacancies reached a record quarterly high of close to 1 million in the first quarter. The number of job vacancies jumped 2.7% from the previous peak in the fourth quarter. There were vacancies in the healthcare and social assistance sectors, hitting a record high of close to 137,000. That is up almost 91% from the first quarter of 2020. While much of the world is concerned about higher food and energy prices, a recent study suggests the luxury market is poised to grow by 5% this year. Bain & Company reports the market grew by nearly 1/3 to $198 billion last year, rebounding from its worst record dip due to the pandemic-related lockdowns. Sales of personal luxury goods, including apparel, accessories, and footwear, posted high double-digit growth in the first quarter of this year. This was despite the first signs of economic uncertainty tied to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Twitter's board is recommending that shareholders approve the proposed $44 billion sale of the company to billionaire Elon Musk. The Tesla CEO reiterated his desire to move forward with the acquisition last week during a virtual meeting with Twitter employees. Shares of Twitter, however, remain far below Musk's offering price, signaling considerable doubt the deal will actually move forward. The maker of Frosted Flakes, Rice Krispies, and Egg Waffles has announced that it is splitting into 3 separate companies: a cereal maker, a snack maker, and a plant-based food company. Kellogg says the proposed spin-offs of the yet-to-be-named cereal and plant-based companies are expected to be completed by the end of 2023. The companies will both remain headquartered in Battle Creek, Michigan. The snack company, however, will maintain dual campuses in both Michigan and Chicago, with its corporate headquarters located in Chicago, Illinois. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 73 points on the day to finish at 19,257. The Dow was up 641 points to 30,530. The S&P 500 was up 89 points to 3764, and the Nasdaq was up 270 on the day to 11,069. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.09 to $110.65 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 10 cents to $6.85 US. Gold was down $5.59 to $18.33.16 US an ounce, and silver was down 5 cents to $21.70 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $14.15 per bushel, barley's at $9.69, canola's at $22.70, and corn is at $12.06 per bushel. Live cattle were down 20 cents to $137.83. Feeder cattle were up $2.35 to $175.30, and lean hogs were up $1.73 to $112.73. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 77.43 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Tuesday was National Indigenous Peoples Day here in Canada. A number of special events were held in Lethbridge at both the U of L and Lethbridge College celebrating the day. The event, which falls on summer solstice, is meant to recognize and honor First Nations, Métis, and Inuit cultures. There are no less than 5 Liberal MPs who need to be either fired or shuffled to another portfolio. That's according to political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, who explains why in just a moment. But first, here a look at some of the special events taking place right here in southwestern Alberta.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. Explore the exciting and delicious downtown food scene at Foodie Fest on Tuesday, June 28th. Food trucks will gather at Galt Gardens with other amazing opportunities to enjoy the many downtown restaurants with free samples. Plus, select stores will also be open late for shopping. It will be great fun for everyone. For more information, visit the Downtown Lethbridge BRZ Facebook page. The Interfaith Food Bank invites you to join them on Canada Day at Galt Gardens. On July 1st, come celebrate our great country of Canada with a charity breakfast, live performances on the community stage, LeBaron's Car Show, picnic in the park, and so much more. Activities will showcase Canadian culture, diversity, traditions, food, and music. To find out more, visit interfaithfoodbank.ca/events. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
The Trudeau government continues to deal with a number of issues, many related to travel. The government says when it comes to passports, all of the delays we've been seeing across the country is due to a surge in applications. Now, to discuss this in more detail is political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly. Brian, you looked at the numbers and you say there's really no surge. Why the delays then?
That's the million-dollar question that we don't have an answer to because the government keeps saying, well, no, it's due to a surge. So here's the situation. Between 2013 and when the pandemic started, we generally had between 4.7 and 5 million passports issued per year. That works out to between 90 and 98,000 applications and passports issued every single week if you average it out. Now, of course, there's going to be some ups, some downs. The government says, well, during COVID and in the year from April 1st, 2020 until March 31st, 2021, there was only 360 odd thousand passports issued. And then the next year, there was 1.2. But since April 1st of this year, more than 540,000 applications. Now, that sounds like a lot, but Hal, I did the numbers. It works out to 54,000 per week for the 10-week period leading up to when they said this is a problem. It is at about 55% of their pre-pandemic level. So yes, it's a surge from what they've dealt with for the last 2 years, but it is well below, as I said, just over half of what they were dealing with before. Now, people have said, well, it's because of staffing shortages. The minister said not a single employee was laid off from Passport Canada. They had them doing other work. This increase has been growing gradually since 2021. There's no excuse for there to be any staffing shortages because they're all still there. They're all still employed. Well, they must be working from home. They tell me no. Passport Canada only has 11% of their workers working from home. Now, Service Canada, which also deals with passports, about 70% of their employees are working from home. So that may be part of it. But the government just keeps trying to blame everyone else for their problems. And when it comes to passports, they say it's because you waited too long. You guys came at us with a surge of applications after 2 years. No, it's well below what they're used to dealing with. This is a problem for the department, and they've got to deal with it soon rather than let this continue to fester.
Brian, you recently wrote a column calling for 5 different Trudeau cabinet ministers to be fired or shuffled. Now, you say you're not alone in pointing out problems with the Trudeau government. Is Ottawa kind of adrift right now? What's going on?
Well, they really are. Just look at what we talked about a moment ago, passports. They can't issue passports. That's a basic government service. They can't get the security screening right at airports, specifically at Pearson. They can't get the Canada Border Services agent screening right for people coming in. So you have trouble getting into the airport to leave. You have trouble coming back if you've left the country. We've got a situation where the foreign affairs minister has diplomats going off to party it up with Russian embassy staff to celebrate Russia Day while we're ostensibly at war with them. We've got an immigration system where to bring in a skilled tradesperson, 43-month delay. There are all kinds of problems surrounding this, Hal, and these are not issues that the government can blame on anybody else, and yet they are. They continue to just try and put the blame on somebody else. It's not our fault. It's external factors, or it's the public's fault. You don't get your laptop out quick enough at the screening. This is a government that doesn't seem to be with it anymore. It's not clicking. So beyond the columns that I've written for The Sun, I've seen columns in the Globe, the National Post, the Toronto Star. Tom Mulcair, former leader of the NDP, wrote a piece saying this is a whole of government incompetence. And the former head of the civil service under Brian Mulroney, who also held senior civil service positions under Pierre Trudeau, says that the way Trudeau's running things, it's breaking the civil service. So this is not a government that's running well. They're getting the fundamentals wrong, but don't worry, they're banning single-use plastics.
Brian, there's also been a lot of controversy surrounding the Liberals' Bill C-11, or some call it the Attack on Our Online Freedoms Bill. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation released a report discussing the potential harms to Canadians, and a number of Conservative MPs have spoken out about the bill. Where does it stand right now?
Well, the way it stands right now, it's going to pass. There might be some tweaks at the Senate. We have to hope for that, but I've long given up hope that the Senate will do anything of any major usefulness, because they generally don't. They didn't when it was a fully partisan organization. Now this independent senators group that just, they're all independent senators appointed by Justin Trudeau, who just happen to vote more in line with the Trudeau Liberals than the former Liberal senators do. So they're not overly independent. They don't stand up and tell the government that they're doing things wrong. I don't think that they'll rush the bill through before they rise for the summer, the way the House of Commons did. But I have no doubt that this will pass in one form or another. And now this is the bill that you and I have been talking about for a year or so now. It used to be called Bill C-10 before the last election. This is the one that can regulate user content, meaning, your cat videos can be regulated by the CRTC. Now, will they do that? Maybe, maybe not. But for creators who make a living off of YouTube, off of Instagram, off of Facebook, lots of Canadians do that, and they have global reach. This could actually be detrimental to them. And many of the creators, online creators, spoke up. But this is being driven primarily by Quebec's arts and entertainment industry, which wants money from organizations like Netflix, like Prime Video, and they want those to be regulated. And so the CRT is going to regulate absolutely everything online. So if you like listening to Audible for audiobooks, or you've got a Spotify account for listening to music, you're going to have to suddenly be getting pinged with the government telling you, well, have you read or listened to this Canadian audiobook? Have you watched this Canadian movie? Listen to this Canadian song? They could end up going as far as the CRTC did years ago with saying 3 out of every 10 songs on radio had to be Canadian content. Remember that rule? It's still in place. They could go that far because the government's left it wide open for them. They've kind of passed this bill giving the CRTC immense power and said, don't worry, we'll fill in the details later. Trust us. I don't. You shouldn't either.
Brian, there was a report from Scotiabank on inflation and the rising cost of living. The bank says the federal government needed to cut spending, but Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland did not agree.
Yeah, Chrystia Freeland said, I think we've done that already when she was asked on Monday. She was hosting U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, basically one of her counterparts in the Biden administration. And she was asked about this report, very interesting report that said, look, the Bank of Canada has a role in fighting inflation using monetary policy, raising interest rates and the like. But if the government also has a role, and if the government doesn't play a role by reducing government spending, now well beyond the pandemic spending, they were talking about ongoing growth in spending, because even with the pandemic spending cut back, other areas of government spending continue to grow. So Scotiabank's chief economist, their director of forecasting and modeling, released this report saying government needs to do its part, and if they do, we won't need to see interest rates rise as high as we fear. Why is that important? Because the Bank of Canada said, based on their projections, they will have to continue raising interest rates. And by the time you get around to renewing that mortgage that you signed on to for 5 years, just a year or so ago, you're going to see median monthly payments go up by $600 to $1,000 a month. That's incredible pain. Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland have a choice. We're going to see new inflation numbers out Wednesday morning. I'm betting that they're going to continue to be well above norms, well above where they should be. They've got a choice to try and do their part so that it's not all put on the Bank of Canada, which then puts it onto businesses and homes and homeowners and household budgets they've got to do their part so that that pain the Bank of Canada is going to inflict is lesser. And so far, they're saying no.
You know, my mortgage is coming up for renewal next year, next July, and I locked it in a number of years ago for 2.79. And at that time, I thought, maybe that's not a great deal. Wow, look at
Yeah,
it now.
you might want to renegotiate now if you can, and talk to your bank, talk to your mortgage broker. That's what I would tell anybody watching right now that's in that situation.
Absolutely. Brian, you and I have chatted before about how the Trudeau government is not ready to give up COVID-19 as a political tool. This week, they suspended some of the travel restrictions, but Brian, they hinted that they could come back in the fall with a new definition of who exactly is fully vaccinated. Meaning what?
Well, they might go to 3 doses as fully vaccinated. Now, I've spoken directly to public health officials, including Ontario's chief public health officer, who you might think would be all in favor of saying, oh, yes, you've got to have 3 doses. Well, Dr. Kieran Moore, our chief public health officer, he encourages 3 doses, but he's against making it mandatory or changing the definition. And he has many good reasons, including, have you been infected lately? How long since you were infected? Have you had, some people will need 4 doses. Some people are going to be fine with 2. There are a lot of variable factors in this, even for people that believe you should be getting a 3rd dose, or at least most people should. But the Trudeau government doesn't follow the medical science. They follow the political science. They won the election last year on vaccine mandate questions. That was a big part of why they won, scaring suburban voters in the Lower Mainland and the Greater Toronto area that this had to be done. And polling showed it was popular with certain groups. They got votes from those groups. They stayed in power. Now they don't want to give it up. And so they're talking about bringing these vaccine mandates for travel and for work back in the fall. They just dropped them yesterday on Monday. Now they're saying they might come back in the fall. It's going to depend. I don't think that this is something that will sit well with the wider public the way it did perhaps last fall. But we'll have to wait and see. It's, again, though, it's following political science, not medical science.
Brian, Parliament is set for another year of virtual settings. Now, is this part of the same issue we were just talking about of not wanting to lose COVID-19 as a political tool?
I think so. Look, the legislatures elsewhere are meeting in person. I'm sitting right now not far from Queen's Park, Ontario's legislature. They're about to have a new cabinet sworn in on Friday morning. They're going to have, I believe, a brief sitting this summer. They're going to be meeting in public. There's no masking requirements. Everyone can be there at once. Now, some MPPs may choose not to be there, but they can be. Those same restrictions apply to Parliament Hill, which, by the way, is in Ontario. But Justin Trudeau, remember, he is a guy who masks when he's in the House of Commons, but not when he's in meetings with top Democrats in California. He masks when he's in public settings in Canada, but then parties it up in Europe with foreign leaders at conferences. This is about the same issue, following the political science, scaring his base of voter support that COVID is still a real threat, but then ignoring those same warnings when he's traveling. So yeah, it's unfortunate. Many MPs have spoken out against it, saying that this is not the way Parliament should work and that we lose out on a lot of the social interaction where MPs can walk across the aisle, talk to somebody from another party about an issue that might be affecting their constituents, but also affects the other MP from a different party. And they can work on issues together, approach the government, approach bureaucrats, get things fixed in a very informal way. And that can't happen when you're having these virtual sittings.
Brian, the CPC leadership race continues. Now, you're saying that the Conservatives may be battling somebody other than Justin Trudeau or Chrystia Freeland, the Conservative leader, whoever they choose. Who do you have your eye on right now?
Yeah, well, lots of speculation that Justin Trudeau will leave. Now, I happen to think that if Pierre Poilievre wins the Conservative leadership race, that Justin Trudeau sticks around. But that's not for sure. Neither is Poilievre winning the leadership. These are factors, the unknowns that we don't know at this point. But there's increasing chatter that Chrystia Freeland may not be interested, may not seek out the top job if and when Justin Trudeau leaves. And by the way, he appears checked out already. His government's adrift, and he doesn't seem to care. Nothing's working, and he's not trying to fix anything. So maybe he is leaving. One name that keeps coming up, and I've been watching this guy for some time, is Francois-Philippe Champagne. He's currently the industry minister. He's a Quebec MP who's fluently bilingual, slight accent in English, but speaks beautiful English. He's got international business credentials. He's worked in the States, in Europe, in the UK for quite a while, and he's a blue liberal. This is why it's important for the next leader to be flexible in who they're going, next leader of the Conservatives to be flexible in who they're going after. Francois-Philippe Champagne, being a blue business liberal, would be a much different person to take on than Justin Trudeau. He's not woke. He's not trying to look at those same issues. It would be a very different battle.
Do you think Champagne would potentially look at canceling Bill C-69, which would really help our energy sector?
You know, I haven't talked to him about that specifically. It would be tough for me to say. You know, he is still a Quebec Liberal at the end of the day. He is still a Quebec MP, but he'd be much more open to that than Justin Trudeau, especially if a case can be made, as is currently being made, that look, because we don't have Canadian oil, you've got Russia being able to fill its coffers to continue the war in Ukraine. You've got Joe Biden going cap in hand to Saudi Arabia and Venezuela to try and get more oil. There's an incredible business case to be made for that, and an environmental case, and an ethical case. Champagne would be more open to that, but I'm not saying it's a slam dunk, but he wouldn't be motivated by the same things that motivate Justin Trudeau in the morning, which isn't about making government work right, isn't about the Canadian economy. It's about virtue signaling that he's doing the right thing, or appears to be doing the right thing, to his base of supporters, rather than actually looking after what matters to Canadians.
Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.
Well, the University of Lethbridge has received a $100,000 grant from the Canadian Space Agency to train the next generation of space scientists. The U of L is one of 21 post-secondary institutions in the country to receive a grant through the CSA's Flights and Fieldwork for the Advancement of Science and Technology Funding Initiative. It's a mouthful, but joining me now to discuss this is Dr. David Naylor. He is the physics and astronomy professor and the head of the Astronomical Instrumentation Group at the University of Lethbridge. Dr. Naylor, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, I appreciate it.
Okay, awesome. So, Dr. Naylor, this is big, exciting news for the university and for Canada, I would say, but I'm going to let you explain what this grant is for exactly, because it's kind of a mouthful. So in a nutshell, it's to train the next generation of space scientists in the development of what? A cryogenic something?
Yes. So, most of your viewers may know that Canada is going to be going to the moon on a project called the Lunar Gateway, and the Canadian Space Agency has joined forces with NASA to on this project that will see a Canadian be the second nation on the boots on the ground on the moon. So someone in school today will be a Canadian who will have be only the second nation to step foot on the moon, which is really exciting. And so the Canadian Space Agency funds development in technology so that you mitigate the risk. So things that space is risk, that's all it is and you have to mitigate that. And you need to train the next generation of students who become scientists in the technology that will be needed for the future generations. So that's what this is all about. And we're particularly targeting technology that has a path to the moon, and some other experiments that we're dealing with as well.
That's incredible news. It's very exciting. And so what will this grant money do exactly? What will the U of L do with it?
So when you do research, there are two things you look at. One is getting the equipment, the infrastructure, the hardware. And the second is the money to train students. And so we've been given funding from different grants for equipment. We have 4 industrial partners that are contributing upwards of $2 million. And this piece of the puzzle is for training of students. So these students will be high school students, possibly. We have had some in the past, undergraduate students, graduate students, and so forth. So we're training the next generation of bright minds on the technology that will be required to tackle the problems that will be coming down the pipes in the coming years.
That's amazing. So maybe paint a picture for me. So what will the students and researchers be able to do because of this grant and this program?
So most people don't realize that the moon in some ways is actually harder than Mars as an environment. Mars is really about a temperature of minus 50 degrees, minus 60 degrees Celsius. So Antarctica is actually colder than Mars, but the moon gets significantly colder around 200 Celsius, minus 200 Celsius, and that is because of its orbit, and it's sheltered. The night on the moon is 14 Earth days. So it means that surviving lunar night is a real challenge, and you have to have instrumentation that's checked out to do that. And we have the largest cryogenic test facility, which is kind of like an enormous beer fridge. I mean, it gets much colder, much faster, but it cools to temperatures that nowhere else can be achieved really for the volume that we have. So we can in principle cool a small rover, a medium rover, and a nano rover in our cryogenic facilities. So students will be exposed to the technology that is associated with this kind of work. Basically, when you put things, if you get a glass of pop and put an ice cube in it, it cracks, it shatters. That thermal gradient just causes the ice cube to crack when you have a pop from the fridge. And pretty much everything you cool to these temperatures breaks. The optical, thermal, electrical, mechanical properties, everything, the properties of everything just fail as you get to extremely low temperatures. And so you must be able to design systems that will survive extreme cooling. And that's what we're doing.
Interesting.
The CSA calls it the Flight Sim Fieldwork for Space Technology, but the acronym is FAST. It's a very nice acronym. It's basically you have to simulate a space environment. And we're one of the few labs in Canada that can really do that.
This project must simulate a realistic space environment. So what does that look like in terms of what the students will be doing in the lab at the U of L? Can you maybe give us some examples?
It looks like a big metal tank. You can imagine it as a submarine. When you go in a submarine, it takes some time to get down to the bottom of the ocean. And you can stay there for a long time, but you must be careful when you ascend. You can't come up too quickly or you will get the bends. And it's similar in the sense that when you cool down, like the ice cube in the glass of pop, if you cool down too quickly, the ice cube will shatter. And so we have got to go down to extremely low temperatures, and we can stay there pretty much indefinitely, which is just surprising. And we can get 10 times colder than anywhere in the universe can be. With our cryostat, we can actually get down to 0.3 Kelvin. So it takes a long time to get down there, but then we can stay there. And our record is almost a couple of months staying at that low temperature. And the problem, like a submarine, if you forget to take your toothpaste, then you're stuck because you've got to wait till you come up. So when we cool things, we've got to be absolutely sure that we have everything in the cryostat that we will need as we go down. So it's meticulous work, it's careful work, and we're pretty good at what we do here. So we're training the next generation of students in this technology.
Okay, so Dr. Naylor, is this cryogenic tank actually physically at the University of Lethbridge then, or is it off-site somewhere?
No. It's on the top level of the new science building. So we have to be on the top level because we need a lot of compressors to cool it. So they're in the penthouse. And so we're on level 9 in the science building, and it was designed fit for purpose. So this is the first time we've had a lab that's been equipped specifically for this task.
That's absolutely incredible. So this new type of spectrometer has been identified by the world's leading space agencies like NASA, right, as a necessary step to explore the galaxy. Can you explain why?
It gets tricky pretty quickly, but we now know the. So when you explore the universe, you look at different wavelengths, different colors, So with your eye, you can see the planets out there tonight. But it turns out that most of the energy emitted by the universe is detected in the infrared. That's beyond the limit of human vision. And so you need certain types of detectors and certain types of instrumentation. And the physics is complex, but it boils down to the fact that you have to cool your detectors to extremely low temperatures to work. And then you've got competing contrasting requirements. You would like to cover a full spectral band, a broad spectral band. So if you were thinking about the rainbow of colors, you've got green through to yellow through to red, you've got the whole rainbow. And at the same time, you might want to know, well, is it, lemon yellow, or is it a bolder yellow within the color range? And so the task is to cover a broad spectral range at very high spectral resolution. And that's a challenge. And so the space agencies have realized that this hybrid technology is going to be required. And NASA has identified this. The European Space Agency, with whom we do a lot of work as well, they know that this is the route to go. And so it's on the technology gap. Every year, NASA publishes a technology gap review. Where are we missing in technology? And then the world scientists like ourselves try to fill in those gaps as best we can. So, yeah, I think we know Einstein said the smartest person is the one who poses the right question, not whether you can answer it. The right question is that we need this type of instrument, and now we're trying to develop the instrument, which is well on the path, and we need to train the next generation of students in how to use it, really.
Okay, so we've pretty much determined that this is an important step in the future of space exploration. So could something like this reduce future mission risk and cost then?
Well, yes. I mean, space is all about risk. I mean, you don't get into this game if you're risk averse. So you have to make sure you've got redundancy, full redundancy. So whenever we launch anything, you make sure that there are ways that you can reprogram it. You basically carry two of everything: two lasers, two detectors, two drives, two whatever it is. You have redundancy, and then you also have a redundancy in your hardware, your firmware, and so you can reprogram and reconfigure the spacecraft should there be problems. And so what you don't want to do, and I've been involved in space for 4 decades. I worked at the European Space Agency. What you don't want to do is to launch something and then find out, oh, it doesn't work, and here's why. And we've been in those positions. And so you do as much testing, soaking as you can, and you try. And now the requirement is you must test in a realistic space condition. And that's the new space driver, that you must be able to show that you can evaluate the performance of your instrument in the conditions that it's going to experience once it gets out there. And that is what we do. So we've got one of the most realistic space simulators in Canada because of the low temperature side. Many people can generate a high vacuum, but we have high vacuum and extremely low temperatures. And that's precisely what is going to be needed to reduce the risk. So we need to identify problems on the ground where we have a chance of fixing them and redesigning them before we launch a $10 billion thing, and then we find out, oh yeah, we should have thought about that.
So Dr. Naylor, has the University of Lethbridge taken part in any such study or project before? Like, maybe you can explain in what ways the U of L has shaped space exploration in the past, or is this a first for the university?
The University of Lethbridge, our group's been funded by the Canadian Space Agency for almost 20 years. We've been funded by ESA as well, and also NASA, actually. We have an instrument that flew on a U-2 aircraft, Earth ER-2 aircraft. So we're pretty old hands at this. And we built up the technology over, as I say, over several decades to become really the leading cryogenic space facility in Canada.
That's amazing. Has Canada had much involvement in influencing space exploration?
That's yes and no. We're a small country, really, and so the tax base is small. So our space agency does not get the kind of funding that NASA does, for sure. Europe, the countries in Europe joined together to form the European Space Agency, and you have, I forget the number, but it's probably 15 countries, maybe more, and they each chip in, and then they do big things. Japan does it on its own. Russia did it on its own. China does it on its own. So Canada can't do it on its own. We just don't have the resources to do it. But there are a lot of really talented scientists and engineers in Canada. And what happens is that NASA and ESA invite us to join their teams. So Canada gets involved in space because of the expertise and excellence that exists in the professors in universities across Canada. And it's interesting because we have ties with Europe and America, we actually get involved with both agencies. I've worked with NASA and with ESA, and sometimes NASA and ESA don't work well together, but we're in a kind of a neat position that we can join forces with both, and we get invited to. So we've been invited to participate in a mission that is being considered by NASA.
That is extremely, extremely cool. How much time do you think it will be before a Canadian steps foot on the moon?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. Canada joined into the Lunar Gateway project, so Prime Minister Trudeau committed $2 billion to that effort, and in return for supporting that work, Canada gets a flight to the moon for a Canadian. So the second nationality to step foot on the moon will not be Russian or Chinese. Well, I mean, perhaps it could be, but it is going to be a Canadian after Americans, which is really kind of exciting. We don't actually know yet. The Artemis project is going to go back, and they're thinking probably 2025. And when the Canadian will be there, it's not clear. There will be a launch slot and a seat on the spacecraft, but it really will be a big thing for Canada.
Oh, it's giving me chills just thinking about it. Dr. Naylor, thanks so much for joining me today, and all the best in this study.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Absolutely. Dr. David Naylor is a physics and astronomy professor and head of the Astronomical Instrumentation Group at the University of Lethbridge. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.